Welcome to our first webinar of the year, managing a skills shortage, which is certainly on everyone's mind at the moment. My name's Ben Flynn, as you know, and before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which we all meet, the Wathaurong people, and pay our respects to their elders, both past, present, and emerging. I'd also like to say a big thank you to our platinum partner, Pixels, Nathan and the team there. At a digital agency, are great to work with. So if you've got any website needs or online marketing needs, please get in contact with them. So today I'd like to welcome Simon Hill, the Regional Manager of Matchworks. Welcome, Simon.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Simon. And Dr. Liz Stewart, who's the Manager of Career Services at the Gordon. Welcome, Liz.
Thanks, Ben.
Jackie Edge, who's the Senior HR Consultant at Envisage HR Solutions. Welcome, Jackie.
Thanks, Ben.
And Mike Finesse, who's the Business Development Consultant at GeForce Recruitment. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Ben, and good morning.
Very good. Jackie, I might start off with you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Has Geelong got a skills shortage?
Well, we don't think that's the case. We're experiencing an influx of talent. They're coming in from Melbourne and Sydney and other regions of web developers, digital professionals and senior professionals. Yep. Compared to December, we're filling jobs quite easily at this time. And we're also positioned to really recruit for senior executive positions because that talent's actually moving into our region.
Okay, interesting. And Mike, GeForce Recruitment, how are you finding things?
Yeah, it depends on the division, Ben. I think generally speaking, though, we do, like many other recruitment agencies, we are challenged with finding quality candidates. We have a number of vacancies that are available across the business units at the moment, and unfortunately, they're not same level of candidates that are applying for them. So that's something that has been the case for some time now, and hopefully we will be able to come up with some solutions to try and get around that in the future.
Now, my reckoning is that Geelong's unemployment's about 2.4%. Regional Victoria is 3.8%, and I think across most of Victoria it's about 5%. And there's new figures coming out today, so that probably suggests that it is pretty tight. But it's interesting to unpack it a little bit. Simon, with Job Active and Disability Employment Services, has low unemployment had an effect on your caseloads?
Yeah, it has, Ben. Obviously, a lot of our clients that we work with are lower skilled and potentially have other barriers to getting into work. So they have found the market harder. It's a bit funny in a way that the harder the market gets, the actual more difficult it gets for those job seekers because they generally get pushed to the side. What we're seeing is a lot of job seekers moving within roles as well because there's plenty of opportunities available, and which therefore then if you haven't got the skill set or as greater skill set of some other people that are already in those industries, you do get to push to the side. So it has had an impact, definitely. And there's just a bigger gap between what employers are wanting and desire compared to what potentially the skill set of some people are out there, especially in the lower sort of skill level roles.
I'd absolutely agree with you, Simon. And what we're finding is the jobs that have been challenging to fill in the past are still challenging to fill now, and that's exactly what you're talking to. But what we're finding with the businesses that are our clients is that they're flexing, so that they're looking at different ways of bringing people in and different people to what they initially expected to have in, and talking them through what that looks like from a business model perspective.
So you think there is a bit of a challenge with employer expectations? Are they still on that journey in terms of thinking outside the box a little bit more and accepting different cohorts of candidates?
Yeah, well, that's what we coach them to do and say, okay, well, instead of looking at the traditional market that they might have looked at in the past, we might say, okay, well, let's look at groups of overseas workers coming into the region. Let's look at uni students or trainees and leverage those government incentives at the time and really look at how we support those new entrants into the workplace a little bit differently to what we were doing in the past.
So Simon, getting back to that point, do you think employers are starting to think outside the box and look at opportunities to job share, for example, as part of their recruitment?
Yeah, a few. Look, there definitely employers have started to we've seen as the market's got tighter, they've started to look at other opportunities. And some of the areas that Jackie talks about, have been removed in recent times in terms of less people coming in from overseas and lack of uni students. So they've had to adapt. It has been a little slow. When COVID really hit, the market was quite buoyant, and I think employers found it quite easy. But as it's got tighter, we're definitely seeing employers working in different ways now. We've even got an employer that's focusing on clients that are not vaccinated, or people that are not vaccinated, because they're able to do the work that they've got required. So people are looking at different opportunities to try and attract people to their business.
Interesting. And look, Jackie, you mentioned importantly some of the funding available to employ people. I'll just point people to the Jobs Victoria, where they can get funding up to $20,000 to employ someone who's been unemployed for 6 months, and also someone under 25 as well. Mike, the other area of funding is traineeships. Now, the government came out and gave people a 50% discount on trainees and apprentices, which is amazing. But how's that industry? Is it actually, I understand it's actually quite hard to find trainees these days too.
Yeah, it is. And further, I guess, to some of the points that have already been made, I think part of our responsibility is to also talk to employers about their expectations. So we find a lot of the time we're managing that expectation. And sure, they want the perfect person, and ideally with a lot of experience. But when it comes to trainees, I think one of the things that we continually remind our hosts, or for that matter, any other client, is that the trainees is base level. So it's a great opportunity for them to obviously train people up from the very beginning. And that, in some instances, is something that we will bring forward during a discussion. Often people are looking for someone that's experienced, but they don't take into consideration the benefit and the value to both the candidate and the business if they take someone on that's young and train them up, to not only do the job that's expected of them, but also, it's a great way of bringing them into an existing business culture and making sure that they are a suitable fit.
Yeah. And the numbers around trainees, is there less young people going into traineeships and apprenticeships, or how's that looking?
Look, in our business, I think it'd be fair to say that there are less trainees than there are apprentices. Yep. But more recently, one of the interesting things that I've noticed is that there are a lot more business trainees that are being looked for. And so from my perspective, I'd say the share of trainees in that I have had to deal with and hosts that I've dealt with are probably a larger percentage of them would be trainees in business admin. Yep. Very
good. Now that's a nice segue. Liz, welcome. And I'm sorry to keep you hanging for 8 minutes there, but I'm really interested in your perspective from the Gordon. Now the traineeships is a nice segue for you, given most trainees will study at the Gordon and other places. So what are young people choosing to do? What are you seeing there?
Perfect segue there, I think, because we're certainly seeing a lot of young people still very much interested in the apprenticeships and traineeships. But like Mike says, I think there's been a really strong uptake in the non-trade traineeship. So in admin, classic example, lots more women entering traineeships and apprenticeships, lots of great programs supporting women to get into those, which is fantastic. I think young people are looking to work and study and to find a means to balance that, as they always have been. But I think so I guess the earn and learn model that's associated with apprenticeships and traineeships continues to be really popular. So there's that sort of balance of having that reliability and stability in terms of income and employment, as well as earning a qualification or a credential at the end of it. So we're certainly seeing that apprenticeships and traineeships, in terms of commencements, remains very strong. Completions is another matter in terms of finishing through to the end of the program.
Yeah, okay. And are you finding young people generally are pretty empowered, given that it's a candidate's market?
Not necessarily. yeah, and it's interesting because you would think that might be the case because there are so many fantastic opportunities at the moment. It's just about knowing where and how to look for those. And I mean, that's really something we do at the Skills and Job Centre, is to help and empower all people, but young people as well, to find those opportunities and to sort of to navigate all the different programs and providers that are out there. Obviously, it's quite overwhelming for a young person. So I wouldn't necessarily say empowered, and there's a huge amount of I mean, unemployment's one thing, but there's also underemployment. So we're seeing a lot of young people that are very much underemployed, 4 hours a week, 8 hours a week, when they might actually want 25 or 38 hours a week work. So yeah, interesting point, that one.
Can I just add to this interesting discussion? The other aspect that we're looking at is succession planning. So baby boomers are starting to retire, and getting these young people and trainees into the business and flexing the business model to support that transfer of knowledge and skills is really important, just for business planning and succession planning. So that's the other sort of aspect of why this is important.
Yeah, and you're obviously talking to a lot of clients around this sort of stuff, Jackie. I wonder, are you seeing more and more of your clients coming and asking for advice on attraction and retention on top of succession planning as well?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the key things that we always, tell our client is, if you think your high-performing staff member is fantastic, so do your competitors. So how are you going to retain their talent? First and foremost is around flexibility, and Geelong is people are moving to Geelong, and they're moving here for a lifestyle choice. So what we need to do is meet them halfway in their work-life flexibility requirements, and really understand what's going to satisfy them. It's not always a monetary aspect that's going to satisfy them. We're also looking at doing a whole lot of cultural reset sessions with our businesses, and really coming in, bringing people back into the workplace. And we're facilitating a lot of retention strategies with our businesses, just to retain talent as well and identify who that key talent is.
Yeah. And just on that, Jackie, do you see this as being, is there a long-term trend here? I think the tight unemployment rate's going to last for quite some time. Do you think the candidates are going to feel empowered and keep shifting for a period of time?
Yeah, and that's a really interesting question, because there's two aspects to that. One is when people shift, they're looking, what we're seeing is that they're looking, the first question is, can I work from home? And the negotiation is, well, how much? And that's got to work for all parties. The other aspect of that is the monetary. So people are coming from Melbourne and Sydney, and they're asking for 10 or 20 grand more in their salary than what we usually pay here. So it's around doing a salary benchmarking exercise, understanding deeply, what those boundaries, and if you do agree to that increased salary for the new person, how does that affect the rest of your team, and how are you going to manage that from an operational financial perspective? And the third aspect, what was I going to say? I was going to say something. I don't know, it's gone. It'll come back to me. But
probably other advantages like PD and training and things like that to to help people along on their career journeys would be important for candidates, I imagine, as well. Simon, given you're part of the Matchworks national organisation, can you give me, how are we faring in Victoria or Geelong compared to other parts of Australia?
Yeah, pretty good, Ben, to be honest. In the Geelong or Barwon region, we traditionally are probably in the top three, if not top two, in terms of the percentage of caseload that's placed into work in any particular month, which is promising and good to see compared to other parts of Australia and Victoria. We're definitely seeing that we're moved ahead at a faster rate than what's been happening in metropolitan Melbourne, per person or per caseload. So yeah, definitely we're comparing quite well in the Barwon region. I guess that's fine in one stretch, but from another point of view, it is also about what the retention is of those job seekers into those jobs and that long-term nature. And some of that has been inconsistent in recent times, really no different to other parts of Australia, but are definitely businesses that are impacted by COVID or can be impacted by COVID relatively quickly has diminished the retention of some of those roles as well, of people that have been placed.
Oh, interesting. Ladies and gentlemen who are joining us today, Simon, I'll just hold you there. If anyone's got any questions of our panelists, please use the Q&A or the chat function below. Happy to go through them and pass those messages on. Mike, Ballarat, G-Force are obviously in Geelong and Ballarat. And is Ballarat different from Geelong?
Same, but different, Ben.
Yeah.
And I guess I can say that with confidence because I spent a bit of time up there with the Ballarat crew. Yeah, it's interesting in my travels, every regional city or town has, a really strong local presence and a desire to stay and keep working within the local business network. So the challenges, I think, in general are pretty much the same in Ballarat as they are in Geelong. I find that the conversations I have with people in Ballarat are very much the same as in Geelong, or for that matter, Warrnambool or anybody else that I go. But then having said that, obviously one needs to be conscious of those specific local issues or challenges that each region faces. I can't expect to go in there and think that they're exactly the same problems. So above and beyond, one of the things that we do is always make time to sit and listen and ask people what their needs are, not to assume that they're going to be exactly the same as anybody else. But employment up there in Ballarat is a challenge for us, I guess, in terms of still finding the right candidates. We have plenty of opportunities, and if we had the same and equal amount of candidates that are applying, it certainly would make our life a lot easier. But it's pretty much the same, I'd say, Ben.
Yeah. Okay. Liz, so you're obviously talking to young people all the time. I'm really interested in this. Are young people aware of which industries are most affected and where those jobs are? And you talked about the fact they're moving away from traditional trades, maybe into business. Is there any other trends you're seeing there with young people?
Yeah, we are seeing some different trends. I think young people are getting a level of career advice in secondary school.
Yeah.
Are they getting enough career advice about labour market trends and changes? Possibly not. And so certainly in the Skills and Job Centre, we tend to see those that are perhaps age 17 and older, because the school's career counsellors usually attend to the younger market in terms of providing career advice. But I think it is interesting because the most in-demand industries tend to be the ones that the young people are attracted to, which is healthcare and social assistance. So the industries align, but the occupations don't. For example, healthcare and social assistance continues to be popular, but specific occupations within that industry. So medicine, nursing, still very popular. Early childhood, aged care, perhaps not so popular. So it's not so much about the industry, because the industries actually align in terms of what young people want. That aligns with the industry demand, but in terms of the actual occupations within those industries, there's a bit of a mismatch, and that comes back to what we're talking about before and what Jackie mentioned around attraction and retention. And so it's one thing to sort of attract, but then how do we retain? And it is more than pay. It is more than those basic working conditions. It's also about those intrinsic motivators as well, which are opportunities for professional development and the relationship that the young person would build with their direct manager as well. So often we see those things as costly, and they don't necessarily need to be. And of course, there's a big difference between a small mum and dad business versus a large employer or a large organisation in terms of the professional development opportunities that they can provide. And they don't necessarily need to cost money, but they always cost time. And I think a lot of managers, supervisors, owners, they don't necessarily have the time at the moment to actually spend training and supporting and engaging those young people. So I think it's about looking for simple ways that don't take too much time, that can motivate, inspire, engage those young people and keep them involved and interested in the profession. And I think there's lots of opportunities there to explore as well.
Yeah. And just to expand on that, Liz, I'd say it's not just young people that those suggestions you've made are relevant too. When we do employee engagement surveys, which are a really important thing, and we're doing a lot of them now to really understand the workforce needs and pressures, recognition is often the number one piece of feedback that we get. And it is simply walking past someone's desk saying, hey, what you're doing now is a great job, and moving on. It's just those small, minor things throughout the day, reinforcing good behaviour, the performance you want to see, and that it makes them feel great and blossom and builds that trusted relationship and opens those conversations. The other thing, so just quickly, I wanted to say about attraction and retention, branding is super important. So what we find when we have clients that we work with that don't have strong brands, that challenge to find the right person is even more difficult. The candidates in the market want to see your brand. They want to understand who you are and your values, what your values are. They want to see testimonials. One of your competitive advantages is attracting talent and becoming a workplace of choice, so that you get the best talent that you can possibly attract with all the factors and what you can offer. So that branding is super important.
So I take it people can be picky around finding the organisation that fits with their purpose.
Absolutely. And what we're finding now is people are driven by flexibility and values, their values, and of course, salary. And what we're seeing in the market, and this is language coming from candidates, is that they work with an employer. So no longer is the attitude that I work for someone, it's I work with someone. So when they're using that language, they're looking at the value alignment and saying, does this brand align with my personal values?
Yeah. Could I just add to that,
Mike?
Jackie?
Yep.
I recently read an article very much on that topic, and as well as saying those things that you've reinforced there, they also the feedback on this particular report, which was PwC, a Price Waterhouse report that was recently came out. It also the importance of enjoying and getting on with your workmates and colleagues. And that was something that in this particular report, where they actually went to candidates or employees and also referred and compared the feedback they received back to the executive and senior level management as to what was important, they find it considerably different, conflicting opinions. So absolutely really important to understand what people's needs are, because I sense during COVID that's changed dramatically as well. So it's important for employers to be aware of what people are looking for and not assume that things of the past are important anymore.
Simon, I might just ask a question from Wendy and Faye, and we touched on this earlier, but people with disabilities. So we know that the employment of people with disability in Australia is below European standards. We've got some work to do. Have you seen it across Matchworks? Are you starting to see a change in that philosophy from your employers?
Yeah, for sure. I think employers are really become even more open-minded. Some of that's become from a necessity perspective, but also understanding the greater skill sets that are around in this area. I think there's been a lot of work done in the Indigenous space as well, in general, Indigenous employment, and some of the similar themes in terms of the skill sets and the strategies that are being used for the Indigenous community are also relevant to the disability community as well. So we are seeing, more traction in that particular space. And the other thing about it is what we've seen recently, which has played into the hands of a lot of our clients in this area, is the fact that employers have been unsure about the level of business they're going to have if they're in a COVID industry, and therefore are only looking for people for a certain amount of hours, which therefore a lot of the people with disabilities can only work a certain amount of hours during a certain period. So it does make it a lot easier. And so therefore they've become, a prime candidate for this particular employer, which is great, which is fantastic to see, because they do an amazing job and are very, very capable. And there's some great employers that support our clients that have got a disability.
Now, thanks, Simon. Now, the other topic I really want to touch on is, there is a job shortage. It might be different in different industries, but if you're a business, a small business, what are the best channels to get out there and try and find some staff at the moment? Jackie, I might start with you. Is it a matter of banging out a seek ad and hoping people apply, or is there other things people can do?
No, not at all. And we apply a very strategic approach to our marketing. And what I encourage people that are trying to do it on their own, small businesses in particular, is to really look at, again, your personal brand and reach out through your personal networks. Get out there, look at how, advertising is being done by businesses that are outside of your competitors, and apply those methods to attracting candidates. It might be through your network, it might be through unusual channels or mediums, just to see if you can pitch to people that are not necessarily looking on Seek. There's a lot of aggressive recruitment happening at the moment where people are being headhunted, and then people are moving around. But you really want someone to be coming to you and really hungry to be with you. And I think one of the aspects is, we've all talked about the Great Resignation before, and we're seeing that come into effect. So wrapping your arms around your top performers in your team is super important from a competitive perspective. Because we're seeing people move around, it also means that teams are forming. So we don't all of a sudden that our high performing team is somewhat diminished by, just working out who this new person is and how they work. So if you can wrap your arms around your existing high performing team and retain them, all of a sudden you're at an advantage from your competitors who are, dealing with this sort of the impact of this resignation and this movement in the market. Yep.
Liz, can I just ask you, is there anything the Skills Centre at the Gordon could do to help businesses find staff?
Yes, definitely. It's about, I think, reaching out to your local networks, and at the Gordon Skills and Job Centre, and this is not a shameless plug, although it kind of is, I think we're perfectly positioned there. So we have a online platform similar to Seek, Career Hub. It's totally free, unlimited ads. So employers are able to actually log in and register their business details and post unlimited job ads, and that will reach quite a broad audience. We push that out to all our networks in Geelong and Wyndham. So it's not just students that are viewing those ads, but of course we get a lot of students. And at the Gordon, it's not necessarily about younger people either. Our average student is age 35. So as we know, a lot of people coming back to TAFE are reskilling or upskilling. So we have quite a mix of different people that are actually viewing those Career Hub ads. But also, I think the benefit in reaching out to the Skills and Job Centre is that we can also help to connect the employer to our networks as well. So it's just a good starting point, and then we can direct the employer where they need to go.
Fantastic. Now, Mike, have you got anything to say to any of those prospective employers out there who need a bit of help?
Yes, and it's on a similar vein to what's already been discussed. I think I understand and totally get what it's like to run a small business. I've been there and done that myself. So you're time poor and you're not necessarily money rich, yeah? So I think it's important to reinforce the fact that there are other organisations out there that can work for you and on your behalf. So don't be afraid to reach out. Now, I am going to give GForce a plug in this instance, obviously, because we provide a service to people and we have an extensive network within our organisation. We're not only a recruitment agency, but we're also specialised in apprenticeships and traineeships. We also support other divisions as well, whether it be DES, Transition to Work, Job Active, and Parents Next. So if someone comes to us and said, I need help, we have a number of services that we can provide them. And at the very least, we can have a discussion with them and provide them with some facts. Don't be afraid to reach out and say, I need help, because I find that during my discussions with a lot of people, they're surprised with some of the solutions that we can come up with them, or for them for that matter. And we do have a very broad entry level of candidates available to us, similar to that of the other people that are participating. So reach out, ask questions, and look for external organisations that specialise in this sort of thing to provide that service for you.
Excellent. And Simon, are you happy to hear from prospective employers around Geelong?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of opportunities for employers to get access to a variety of different services. Some of those are free services that are funded by both state and federal governments, and there's a lot of support and networks out there. So I just encourage people to reach out to one that you feel areas that you feel comfortable with, And then hopefully you would expect that the professional advice would be around what's going to suit best. We have plenty of employers that end up in private recruitment because it works best for what their need is, and vice versa. So I think if people just go to where they feel comfortable with to start with, and hopefully they get the best advice. But there's plenty of opportunity out there, I think, is probably the best thing that I could say in that way.
Well, that's a nice note to depart on, Simon. There is opportunities out there. It's a challenging time, but if we think outside the box, hopefully we can take advantages. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. The 30 minutes always goes so super quick, and I know we always feel like we leave a little bit on the table, but I'd like to thank our panelists today. Simon Hill, Regional Manager of Matchwork. Thank you, Simon.
Thanks, Ben.
Dr. Liz Stewart, Manager of Career Services at Gordon. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Ben.
Jackie Edge, a Senior HR Consultant at Envisage HR Solutions. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
And Mike Finesse, Business Development Consultant at GeForce Recruitment. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, everybody. And we'll post this on our socials. So if anyone wants to revisit what we've discussed today or refer a friend to be able to engage with this content, please do. Thank you, and have a great week.
Great.